As a purist, you want to see like no time limit, no points, right? Like as a purist, that's like
Yeah.
the real shit. But then you get it what we saw with Gordon and Keenan, where you can get like an hour and a half, 2 hour match, right? And
Yeah.
it's not audience friendly.
Here we are with the man. First, I think everyone's interested. Just take us through the journey on why you came to Vietnam, who was involved, and we know this was your first trip to Asia. So take us through that process of coming from all the way from San Francisco here out to Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, first, thanks for having me out. Dude, I've always wanted to go Asia. I think coming to Asia has just been something that I've always wanted to go. Obviously, I love the food. I'm a big fan of not just Vietnamese, but I love like Japanese food, Korean food. Like some of my favorite food is Asian food. So it's just, I think the journey to coming out, it's a far trip. 16 hours is it's a pretty decent trip out here. But really what it was is, Fong, who's a friend of mine, he trains at a local gym nearby, and he cross trains with us, in our comp class, and he's like, dude, you got to come to Vietnam. You got to come to Vietnam. And for like 6 months, he kind of pestered me about this trip.
Yeah.
And then I was just kind of like looking at my time, and I was like, you know what? I think, January is kind of like our slow season. Like we just finished up Worlds in December. Let's
Mhm.
fucking do this. Like this is
Yeah.
kind of a cool opportunity to check it out, and something I've wanted to do. So get something off the bucket list, but also, get to do it with a group of friends out here.
Yeah. Yeah. I first met Fong almost a year ago at Over Under, and we just like connected immediately. And it wasn't long after that he was like, "Yeah, I'm bringing out some black belts," and like as if the deal was already done. That's how much confidence he had, and how much he was going to get you out here. So, pretty influential guy.
Yeah.
And here we are, and it's so cool to see, like your 10th Planet team kind of come together. You're in a new environment. They're showing you around. You're going to different gyms. You're doing seminars, and that it seems like a really special thing because you guys have got a really cool bond.
Yeah.
What's it like to be in Asia for the first time in Vietnam with your boys, doing the grappling? What's that like?
I mean, for me, that's kind of like where a true vacation comes true, right? Like to me, like, I'll be with my lady and we'll go on a trip somewhere, and I'm always like trying to see where can I connect jujitsu into it. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And if you get to do a trip that is by its core jujitsu and travel and adventure, it's like that's you know, the ultimate trip. For me, it's really cool is like, a lot of the guys that we're out here with is like, like Fong, he's become a really good friend of mine, and we train together a lot. And, there's other guys too on the trip, like Zach, he has a gym over in Alameda. And, me and Zach been friends together since like the Blue Belt days. We used to work together as bouncers in San Francisco. And so we worked probably about a decade as bouncers, because that's how I supported myself to be able to be a jiu-jitsu competitor. Is I went and was a bouncer at night, because you bounce at night, start work at 9, go to bed probably about 4 or 5, wake up 10 a.m., do your first training, come home, eat, sleep, take another nap, and you go do another training session, lift or something like that. And then you go back to night class. Night class ends by about 8:30. And then a lot of times, honestly, there's like a Vietnamese spot from the old San Francisco gym. I'd go grab a banh mi, and then I'd go straight to work. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But we got to then do more jiu-jitsu at night.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, you guys have, I mean, jujitsu is expanding and growing so fast globally, and for a lot of reasons. You have YouTube, a lot of different reasons. You've seen so much change in
yeah,
jujitsu,
absolutely.
and then when you first started jujitsu, your first 6 months, you probably didn't imagine that you'd have the role that you have and the influence that you have as a jujitsu coach, a gym owner, and things like that. Uh, Take us through a little bit of what you've seen change, since what, 2008 is when you started,
Yeah,
doing
2008,
jiu.
2009, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and what you've seen globally and different communities, your insights.
I mean, jujitsu is to me is just like completely just exploding. Like it just keeps like doubling, tripling every freaking day. It feels like. I remember when I first started. Is it still good?
It's okay. It's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. So when I first started, there really was no jujitsu gyms, right? Like my first instructor was a purple belt. He was a purple belt from Cesar Gracie, and we actually trained inside of a storage unit. Basically we'd wait till the old lady left, open the doors. It was in Ripon, California, just between Stockton and Modesto, and let all the hot air out, and then we just go train on these like blue fold out mats in there. Ironically, there's actually a lot of guys that came out to be like pretty decent, well-known fighters around the world out of that little gym. But there really weren't, at least in that time, like seeing a black belt would be like seeing a unicorn. You know what I mean? And then trying to explain to people what you did. A lot of like the general public that you'd be talking to, like they didn't even know what UFC was. You know what I mean? And then the idea of explaining Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you'd always get to do the same thing. Like Brazilians don't even mean Japanese. And like some people would just get like really kind of confused about what you did. And then you got always the typical like, oh, well, my grandson or my niece or my nephew is like a black belt in Taekwondo or karate. And you're like, what are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm a blue belt. You know what I mean? And you're like,
yeah.
So, you go through those eras where Jiu-Jitsu, I never thought I'd have a career in this. I used to be a firefighter, and I always thought, okay, well, I'm liking this Jiu-Jitsu thing, but I'm always going to have to fall back and get serious at some point and go back to having like a pension and, a good paying job and all that. And there was no money in the sport, not just for like owning a gym, but there also was no money for the sport in the sense of like competing. And that was originally one of my goals, and one of my, my instructor Denny's goals was bringing money into the sport. That was something that we always wanted to see. And it was kind of a dream, but we were like, the general public, like, how are you going to get them on board? And then you see the next evolution, I think, in Jiu-Jitsu, where it becomes mainstream-ish, where people start to know what it's about. And they're like, oh, I know what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. Like, I saw a documentary on YouTube, or like, people hear about it on Joe Rogan's podcast, or they, all those kind of things. And so Jiu-Jitsu then kind of progressed to a semi-mainstream thing. And then you start having like tournaments where there's money on the line. You know what I mean? You see like Metamoris, EBI, those really pushed to the next thing. And that was, like I was saying, like me and Danny and Eddie had the same dream. Eddie was the one who was like, hey, I'm going to put this tournament together and I'm going to give the winner 20 grand. And like in Jiu-Jitsu, we're like, what? You know what I mean? So like really got to give Eddie a lot of props to being one of the pioneers of pushing the sport to a professionalism where we're actually getting paid and not just getting a $5 medal or a $1.50 medal, and then now we're getting to the next new stage where like, dude, like most people know somebody that trains. And in most places, like at least in the US, there's like a gym on like every corner, it feels like, where you used to have to drive. It used to be like an hour or 2 hours. I used to drive an hour and a half basically to get to class every day. Versus now you get one, you're like, oh, I'll choose the gym that's closest to me, because there's so many of them. And then when it goes to like the professionalism as a sport, you see like guys like Gordon that are like millionaires, Craig millionaires, and they're able to pull it off. I'm so happy to see that that's even possible. You know what I mean? And then now you got tournaments with $1 million on the line. I think Craig kind of opened that door with CVI, which was crazy, but you also have like Aida, I think, is doing $1 million for the team total. There's some serious money coming in, and you start seeing now like, Mark Zuckerberg and a lot of these other really, really uber rich people that see the benefits of Jiu-Jitsu. They get hooked on it themselves, and they have the resources to take Jiu-Jitsu to the next level. And I think now it's going to get even more interesting, which is the next, and that's where you see, I don't know, I think it could be good, it could be bad. We'll see how it goes, but the UFC is getting involved, and they're going to be writing out contracts for people, and they really have the money to keep not just like a once a year $1 million tournament, but like maybe weekly, monthly, same way that you see in the UFC. Obviously, I'm kind of like hesitant on it, where like, I don't really like the idea of exclusive contracts, you know? But I also understand, they're trying to take over. It's kind of what they did with MMA. There used to be a lot of other promotions. We'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, and what we're seeing in Vietnam right now is we have a very dedicated but under-resourced community where, I mean, a lot of the local guys, they can't even really afford gym memberships and things like that. And the idea of making jiu-jitsu a career is so outside of their mind. One of the things we've done with Saigon Super Fights through the support of the community, we were giving away some big monetary prizes, for these things, and giving people the opportunity to not only compete with international talent here in Ho Chi Minh City without having to pay a fee to enter the tournament, but with also a cash prize and the opportunity to compete in Malaysia, ADCC, to compete in Thailand, ADCC, ASJJF, and things like that. So we're kind of expanding like that. And through this, now we're starting to see these young Vietnamese grapplers. It's possible to make money. It's possible to do that. So obviously we're a few years behind, America in terms of, America is like the mecca of jiu-jitsu, and that's where the Brazilians decided to start their business in the 90s in California. So we had, let me get your ideas and perspective on this. We've had 2 Saigon Super Fights so far. The first Saigon Super Fights, both were much more successful than anyone thought, right? The second one we did ADCC rules, and it's mainly because I thought everyone wanted to do ADCC rules, but that wasn't really the case,
Mhm.
and it's very complicated. So there was a lot of calls. No one really understood the rules and things like that. So for Saigon Super Fights 3, CJI opened it up, right? For, you got 3 rounds, you've got judges, and there's no stopping the clock. So you got UFC fans are going to watch, wrestling fans are going to watch, jiu-jitsu fans are going to watch, and it's only 1 match at a time. Unlike Flow Grappling, there's 4 at the same time, and sometimes they all work at the same time, right? So what we're thinking about is doing a more simplified rule set, really just submission only, 8 to 10 minutes, and putting it in something that looks like this. In
the ring.
Yes. What are your ideas on that? What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. I think like you kind of hit the nail on the head where it's like ADCC is obviously one of the pinnacles of this sport, but I've been competing and coaching for ADCC for 12 years now, and I learned something new about the rules every single time. So as like someone who's like as deep as it gets into it, I've done the rule seminars. I've been, like I said, going this for 12 years. To expect a general fan to pick up on the rules, I think it's a little bit out of touch, right? Like it's going to be a little hard. And that's just not just ADCC, because I think ADCC is one of the most exciting tournaments. But IBJJF, everything. And what you see with these tournaments also is that this is, I think, where EBI and CGI kind of, I think, take a different approach, is no points. No points. And the reason I don't think that points are good is because judges are always going to fuck up or have biases. You know what I mean? Like you're going to get screwed on certain things. And so I think the idea of that's why I loved about Eddie's EBI is he's like, nah, there's no fucking points. There's no points. There's no judges. You're going to get, the rules are very simple and very clear. So everybody watching it is just going to see, oh, this is how the game goes.
Yeah.
Now I like points things and everything like that. I go to all these tournaments, but I think for if we're talking about expansion, what it sounds like you want to do is you want to bring this more, you're going to have to attract the general public.
Yeah.
And so I think that bringing that to them is, you got to play with maybe the rule set being a sub-only thing. The only thing you got to be careful with the sub-only thing is that it can get boring at times for the general public. You got to play, be careful for stalling. So putting in yellow cards.
Okay.
And then if someone gets 2 yellow cards, they lose a point. You know what I mean? And there is a point in the sense that it's a judge's decision in the end or something like that. You get 3 judges, you said 3 rounds, you got 3 judges, 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And it's that can go against your scoring for that round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that. And I'm just talking off the top of my head. It's not like I have an exact formula. In the ring is cool. I think it's cool. Like we said, you can actually bring an audience, right?
Yep.
And people can kind of see it. And it's also nice that it's elevated. There's pros and cons to everything though,
Of
right?
course.
There's a pros and cons to having this because obviously the ropes can kind of get in the way. And you saw that actually in the UFC where the UFC Fight Pass was doing on this elevated stage, same as Fight to Win. And I've seen it with my own guys where that can kind of screw people over because if you don't do a reset, A is that you have to reset, right? And B is that sometimes the tournaments won't reset. So like if you look at Kainan versus Luke Griffith, Griffith, excuse me. If you look at that match, can't take anything away from Luke. His back take was beautiful, right? But once you have someone's back, there's a certain way that you're supposed to respond to escape, right? Like you have to slip out to one side based on the overhooks, underhooks, and where the body lock is. If you looked at that match, and Luke could have maybe collected it, but Kainan's trying to get his hips out.
Yeah.
And there's actually refs holding him and pushing him back from getting his hips out because he would have fallen off the mat, right? But that's also the correct way to go, right? So he needs to get his hips out this way, and they're keeping him here. And to me, it kind of takes away from Luke's accomplishment of taking Kainan's back. You know what I mean? Because that already was a huge accomplishment. Maybe he would have finished Kainan either way, but it just like kind of taints it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he got the submission, he won. But it's also like Kainan's always going to be like, man, like I'm trying to escape and you have 3 refs pushing you back into the back,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the problem with the elevated stage. Then you get the problem of like the cage. The cage isn't necessarily the best. People use it as a takedown defense. They just keep their back against the wall there. And then you get really boring stalls like you see in UFC. Then you have just like open mats, right? Like you see in IBJJF and stuff like that. IBJJF, it's really frustrating because the border is so small.
Yeah.
And according to their formula, if you take someone down, you're going to get 0 points for it because it landed out of bounds.
Yeah.
And then also the resets are really heavy, right? So you're constantly getting reset, and you never really get time for action.
Are you going to reset in the same position?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You don't. You get an initial restart, right? It's
Yeah.
not in the same position. Most usually. Then you get ADCC, which is exciting, but a lot of times I worry with ADCC about the athletes getting seriously injured when they let these matches go off the stage into the crowd,
Yeah.
like through the chairs and tables. That's fucking entertaining to watch for the general public. It's really exciting. And I think it's adding to the growth of ADCC. But you also got to protect your athletes. And that's kind of where it's like, okay, well, do you now just add an extension border of padded mats, right, around the mat? So there's the out of bounds, and then there's like the second tier out of bounds.
Yeah.
Because right now, like you see Yuri in ADCC in Sao Paulo, it fucking blew out his knee when he landed on the concrete, when his match went out there, and you have the ADCC champion blowing out his knee. And I'm not shitting on ADCC. ADCC, I think, even paid for his like medical expenses and everything.
Yeah.
Like, great organization. But just looking at what is the best, right now I'm a fan of the pit, the Karate Combat CGI pit. I think there's going to be, with something new, there's always going to be a way to game it. There's always going to be like, different things. But I like the pit as far as the out of bounds, and that there's not someone constantly resetting it like you're live. I think the pit, kind of the downfall of the pit is that trying to find somewhere that you can actually watch it. Because if you look how CGI did it at the Thomas and Mack in Vegas, is the entire arena is up high.
Yeah.
So people can look down into the pit,
Yep.
right? But where is the local promoters going to be able to find an arena with higher than the, 6 foot high walls or 5 foot high walls going to be? Because if you have a flat like warehouse where most people get tournaments, they could get an event center or something like that, where you can be able to look down into. Actually, Zach that came with us, he has a tournament called RWI, and he has a kind of an interesting approach, has some flaws, but it still makes it exciting. Is they kind of have it like on a stage in the front, and they take away one wall, right? And so that way it has a pit, but it's a 3-way wall pit. And that way, everybody in the arena can still watch in and see what's happening.
And it's angled?
Yeah, and you still get the 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
But you got to worry about that one side, And so he has like an extra padded mats in case, to stop people from falling. And they got like people there to stop and reset it. But it's also like that's the whole point of the walls. The 45-degree angle is to stop resets from happening.
Yeah.
So nothing's ever going to be perfect, you know? But
Yeah.
I think the idea for you guys where you're at, growth wise, go in one of these rings, set up some seats on the outside. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be really exciting. And just being real, like people come to watch fights, they like chaos. They like a little
Yeah.
chaos, you know? Dude,
Yeah.
that's a Saigon special. This shit's chaos. Driving in traffic out here, this is chaos. So
Yeah.
you add this in this year, I think that's going to be a good set for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because, I mean, like, I think if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner or martial arts, you should be able to handle yourself in any environment. If you're a fighter on the street, you're going to be knocking into walls and stuff like that. You're on the ring, you're just gonna have to deal with it. One of the things I really don't like about jiu-jitsu tournaments is, like in IBJJF, you have this tiny square mat, and there's so much is up to the referee.
They have too much power.
Unlike wrestling, wrestling is very objective. The referee doesn't have a lot of control over what happens. It's very objective for takedowns. Like jiu-jitsu is like, oh, it's 3 seconds. Did he have control or not? And then the way the ADCC rules is, everything's up to the referee.
It's so hard to score in ADCC. The ADCC is the hardest tournament to score. You know? But you know what I like about wrestling is the push-out rule, right?
Yeah.
I think that actually is a topic that more jiu-jitsu event tournaments should have. The ones that are doing like on a flat surface is like, let's talk about not, oh, you got taken down out of bounds. Because what happens is guys that suck at takedowns, they'll play their back to the border, because that way they know that like at any point, if they get taken down, it's not going to be any points, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, in what universe is that actually a good fighting style, right? Like that's the thing, is like we got to remember that we're doing a martial art. So like tactics like that, or like same thing with IBJJF. One of my big pet peeves in the sport is the elevation rule. So like, for example, like if you have me in a triangle, I can elevate you up. I can't slam you, which is understanding, protecting the athlete, but you can sit there in a standing triangle and choke me out, right? And it's like, that shouldn't be allowed. Like, that's just not realistic. And I think we're teaching jiu-jitsu that is not safe for any other circumstance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even in that circumstance with padded floors, it's still so dangerous. So why would we teach that when that can happen on concrete or all kinds of other things? There should be a rule that, like, if for some reason someone can elevate you higher than the hip line, you have to let go, And it's simple. It's like if you did proper jiu-jitsu where you had technique, you'd hook the leg and they wouldn't be able to elevate you and you'd get your finish. But the idea of someone just like elevating somebody up in a triangle or an arm bar above the hip line, it's like, that's a death sentence. That shouldn't be allowed. So I think that that's something that I'd like to see. Those are like two of my big pet peeves, is like the border. Do something similar to wrestling where you have a push-out rule, It's like you can find a version of that might be the answer for the flat surface of like, you push somebody out, you get some kind of an advantage in scoring.
Yeah, in freestyle wrestling, you get 1 point if you push them out.
Yeah.
In folk style wrestling, at least when I wrestled, it wasn't like that. You just reset. But you can get credit for the takedown. If I take you down in the circle and both of my ankles are in the circle and you were way out of bounds, I still get points for that takedown. Whereas in a lot of IBJJF, I've seen referees restart when they even get close to the line, and it's a tiny square anyway. And even if you look at the ADCC World Championships, even some of the best referees in the world can't agree on a call. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and the idea of putting it, like, it's hard to take someone down. And if you can take someone down and you still used all that energy but didn't get anything for it. I remember one of my brown belts, when he first started with me, his name's Jimmy Zen. And he was he came as a wrestler, right? And, we put him into a tournament probably in the first like 2 months or something like that. We were just like, all right, go have fun, bro. Just wrestle these guys. But he didn't know anything about the rules, right? So he was going into a jiu-jitsu tournament with that wrestler mindset. He took the guy down 16 times and he got 0 points, right? And then he lost the match on an advantage, right? But like, think about this.
it was
like,
IBJJF?
It was not an IBJJF tournament, but it was an IBJJF rules tournament. So it was another tournament, like a local tournament, that was using IBJJF as their standard for what people can use. But but he took the guy down 16 times and lost on an advantage. I think the guy like went for a sweep on him, you know, and then he couldn't sweep him, right? But because like he got up to his feet, they gave him an advantage, which, you know, like he didn't get close to sweeping my guy, but still 16 takedowns, not a single advantage, not a single point.
But he didn't hold it for 3 seconds, or what
They land
was?
out of bounds because he was
Yeah.
just blasting guys into oblivion, right? So like he would just go through, snap, boom, blast, and he'd pick the guy up and just, you know, he'd run, and then it'd land out of bounds each time. And then they'd be like, and he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, just keep doing it, bro. But like, make it in bounds. And he doesn't
Yeah.
understand what I'm talking about yet because he's so new.
I know.
But then he just blasted this dude again and blasted this dude again. And I'm like, dude, getting taken down 16 times in 5 minutes is crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, as a wrestler myself, I get frustrated with a lot of jiu-jitsu rule sets and things like that. But I mean, you still have to adapt. I had to an adaptation period myself. But I think like these new promotions like CJI, where you don't stop the match, you know, like you know, in ADCC you go out of bounds, and now you're in like some kind of plot or some very complicated situation. And now you're going to get them to stand up and walk to the center of the mat. Someone is going to get that advantage.
Oh yeah, they're going to fight.
You know what I mean?
They're going to also, not only that, but on the reset, it's hard to get an actual reset of what it was because someone's always going to fight for a little extra on the grip, a little deeper on the grip, or a little bit, you know, instead of overhook, they went underhook, you know what I mean? Like there was always that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And CGI pretty much eliminates that.
Yeah.
Now you have like a new element with the angled walls, which is, I've never wrestled on an angled wall, but going back to Saigon Super Fights 2, we had 200 people. It was absolutely crowded.
That's huge.
And it was storming that day. And Vietnamese don't like to go out when it's storming. It was absolutely storming that day. But the biggest complaint there was, yeah, we don't really understand the rules. To be honest with you, I don't really understand the rules. I just go and my approach is I just don't let people get like score on me, you know, and I go for chokes. So all these like knee on belly for 3 seconds come off. I don't really do that. I just try to take down, pass, submit, right? Which works most of the time. But I did get disqualified once in the ADCC because I didn't get it over.
Why don't you guys do EBI? EBI rules.
EBI rules.
If you're doing in this, EBI rules is going to be the best thing. Okay. You don't have to have any judges as far as point scoring. You win really simply by, in regulation, do you get a submission? If you don't, it goes to the best out of 3 of overtime. Best out of 3 of overtime, one person gets to start on the other person's back. He has 60 seconds to choke the guy out. If he chokes him out, the other guy gets a chance to return it, right? He has to choke the other guy out or armbar the guy in less time, right?
Okay.
And it's the best out of 3. So if nobody taps anybody out in those 60 seconds, it goes to ride time.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to do any real reffing. You just have to explain the rules to your team, and then it's going to be entertaining as shit for the guys because everyone's watching people getting started in armbar, started on the back, and it's like, there's nothing more exciting than seeing a guy just fucking fighting to keep his arm alive. You know what I mean? So I think what you're looking for, unless you got a pit, EBI might be the way to go, you know?
Okay. So it's like, the first 2 overtimes, I can choose to get you an armbar or a rear naked or the seat belt.
You basically start in what's called spider web. So basically I get to go and start an armbar from side control on you, right? Like you're laying there, figure 4'd your arms. And I have to have one hand on the mat. And then you're going to say, ready, set, go. Timer's going to start. And they're keeping track of time. And so if I armbar you, say in 20 seconds, now you get a chance to recover that for that round, right? And then you have to tap me out from the position of your choosing, arm or back. And you got to tap me out in under 20 seconds or I win. Right?
Okay. So let's say the first guy, because I did this in Dominican Republic. I didn't really know the rules. And we go into overtime, and I'm thinking, and this guy was way bigger than me. So he had my back, and I got out in 5 seconds. I'm thinking, all I have to do is hold him for 5 seconds, and then I'm going to win.
No.
But then, like 45 seconds went by, and then we're still going on. Thankfully, I ended up choking him, right?
And then you would win by default right there.
Yeah.
Because it's at the top of the second.
So what would happen if if after the 1 minute or 2 minutes goes by and I don't choke them, then what happens? Because I got out in 5 seconds and I held them the whole time.
Then you go to round 2 and they score 5 seconds versus, you know, a minute, right? Or a minute and a half, whatever you decide to do. So you go and you put that, and then in round 2, say nobody does it. And let's say that 5 seconds plus say the next escape was 20 seconds. Your ride time was like a minute. The next one is a minute. So you're winning 2 minutes to theirs. So that means in the third, they have to tap you. Otherwise, because it's impossible for them to match that ride time that you have.
And in what position do you start in the third round?
You get to choose. So it's a flip of a coin, and you get to choose either back or spider width, right? So you get like seatbelt control on the back, hooks in, no body lock, and then it's like ready, set, go. And then you can kind of go from there. So it's exciting for people because audience is looking at it and they're like, oh shit, he's on his back already. Oh, he's getting choked out. And what do people want to see? They want to see submissions. It's like in kickboxing, they want to see knockouts, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, you're giving that to people. EBI is a great rule set. I think like EBI, CGI, and ADCC are like the 3 best for the sport, right?
Yeah.
It's really the best for the sport. They all got pros and cons. Right now, I think that, you know, Craig's really onto something, but you got to remember that it's something new, right? And with something new, we haven't had enough time for everyone to start gaming it, you know? Whereas like people haven't practiced with the walls yet and they haven't figured it out. I have a feeling there's something with the third round that Craig's going to have to change, because you're going to have somebody that's going to win the first 2 rounds, right? Like someone that has like a lot of energy, and then they're going to stall the third, right? And like for him, he needs entertainment. So you got to come up with something about that third round. I mean, he already has the yellow card, so that could be the answer, is just yellow card it. But you have to give the yellow card enough power that it could override the other 2 rounds. You know what I mean?
So if you lose the first 2 rounds, you have to submit the third round, right?
Yeah, you have to. So you say you're lost the first 2 rounds, according to the judges, you got to go fucking ham. But your opponent could just kind of fucking play it a little safe, just safe enough not to get a yellow card. Or even if he does get a yellow card, it doesn't matter. He won the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
You know? So I think in the third round, maybe you have to do it a little different to keep them active and keep it entertained. Not that someone just kind of coasts through the third round. You just have to make some kind of thing. But this is what I'm talking about, is like, it's always going to be something to game. IBJJF has been around for decades. And so everybody's come up with every little strategy. It's the same thing with ADCC, you know, like guys will go on the back, they'll take their hook out for 3 seconds, put it back in for 3 seconds. They got another back point. Right. And they'll just stack up like that. These little games and things, we haven't seen it enough. So let's see, like Jiu Jitsu community is smart. They're going to come up with some shit. And so, but for right now, I think this is one of the more refined options. You got CGI, EBI, and you got ADCC as kind of like pinnacles for me, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And so with this, you know, what we're thinking is we don't like 1 8-minute round or 1 10-minute round, right? Not 3 different rounds, because of time. You know, if we did 3 5-minute rounds, it would just take so long. And then because we also want people to get in shape, so this is going to attract MMA fighters, wrestlers, and jiu-jitsu folks. Right.
I think, you know, as a purist, you want to see like no time limit, no points, right? Like as a purist, that's like the real shit. But then you get it, what we saw with Gordon and Keenan, where you can get like an 1.5 hour, 2 hour match, right?
Yeah.
And it's not audience friendly. So I think that if I were to give you any advice, and your goal is the audience because you want to spread the sport some more, doing short rounds is actually going to be better, because it's going to be more entertaining in the sense that people are going to get a recharge. They're going to get a second wind. And they're going to come out with a lot more energy, versus at the end of the 8 rounds, they're just fucking slopped over on top of each other. You know what I mean? Especially the bigger guys. Breaking it up into rounds, I think it's going to bring more energy, more excitement. It's probably a better for the audience kind of thing. More moving, more going on, but it's up to you what you decide to do.
So if we have rounds, then we're going to have judges. I mean, and we have people who will do those judgment calls. I am not like, to me, refereeing
you got to make it fair. Someone that's not from the team of the athletes, you know, you have to make sure that none of the judges are connected to the athletes. And then you just have like a red card and a blue card, and they lift the card after each round on who they got it. And then you have you here on the mic or whoever you want. And they're saying, all right, we got 2 judges giving it to blue corner, 1 giving it to red, and you say the judge's name. I think that's really important. What Craig did is that you see who the judge was, And it's not like this mystery person where they get kind of like this protection, you know, to like kind of screw people over. When people know who you are and you're in the community, man, it's a lot harder to get fucked up calls, right?
Yeah.
And so you say, okay, Judge so-and-so, give this round goes to blue corner. And then
Yeah.
that guy hears it. Give him a chance to know. And so he knows, and now he gets to go and kind of adjust from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll do a few test rounds with like on Thursday nights, we'll do like 3 matches. For simplicity purposes, I think like 1 8-minute round would be fine. Like 1 8-minute round, like EBI.
Yeah.
1 8-minute round, submission only. That's the only thing the audience has to look at. Do they have a submission, yes or no? And I think, you know, if people, you know, I don't want people to pull guard, you know, intentionally and installing and stuff like that. But I don't want to have to stop the match. I want to be the referee to be able
I think
to,
if you take away guard pulling, especially out here, you guys got like a couple Dagestani, Russian dude wrestlers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you're creating a rule set to favor wrestling in an area that doesn't have wrestling.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that's
you
true.
kind of got to give the guard puller, but the
Okay.
guard puller is not fun, right? You know,
Yeah.
but you know, here's the thing is this is like, look at CGI, since, you know, Levi versus, he was entertaining as shit and he pulled guard every time. You know what I mean? You're going to have those assassins, and that's just part of grappling.
That's true.
It's grappling. It's not fighting like
Yeah,
MMA.
that's
It's
true.
grappling. So it's like, you can pull guard.
Yeah, you know, I'm biased.
Yeah, of course.
I'm extremely biased, and I have strong opinions that aren't popular. So it's good to hear. Yeah. So no rules, like just submission only, black belt rules, right? EVI. I think it'd be the simplest way we can do it, and then we can kind of test the rounds. But I think the rounds add. Okay, now we got to find judges who are willing to actually do it. And it adds more subjectivity to it, and it adds more time, which means not as many people are going to be able to participate, right? So then, like, do you think like 3-minute rounds is 3 minutes too short?
So, I mean, if you're doing CGI rules, you do rounds. If you're doing EVI, you just do 1A, right? Or 1-5 or whatever you want to do. I think, you know, here with it being a new sport and people not really understanding it, you know, yeah, I think EDI would probably be your easiest way. Less moving parts. You just have to make sure that everybody's clear on the rules of overtime. Overtime is really the only training that you're going to have to do, is like make sure you're solid on overtime rules.
Yeah.
And I'll work with you on that. If you got questions, just let me know on DM and stuff like that. I think that's probably going to be the best.
The only thing like is the third overtime round where they flip a coin, you know, and then they get the choice.
In the first overtime. So it starts in the
like one person, like we both get a chance to take each other's back, right?
Yeah. You both get a chance. So think of it as there's 3 rounds and it starts in the beginning. And so this is going to decide it just decides who starts on offense and who starts on defense. So if I win the flip, I get to choose. I want to be on offense or I want you to be on offense. I'll pick you or I'll pick me, right?
But I mean, we've both gone. You've taken my back. I've taken your back. And now we're in the third overtime round. And
if nothing happens, it goes based on ride time. So you have to have someone with a stopwatch writing down everybody's time, adding all those 3 rounds together, and whoever had the most amount of time on somebody else's back or arm, they win.
Oh, so there's not actually third round.
There is a third round. It's after the third round.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking about the third overtime.
Third overtime is the same, where you're going to start
because like you have the 8-minute round.
Yep.
And you have the first overtime round.
Yeah, 3 overtimes, right?
But
you only flip the coin on the first one.
Okay, but how do they decide who gets positioned on the third round?
Because it starts with, it just keeps recycling it, right? So say I flipped the coin and you were on defense, I was on offense. Well, the next round it goes defense, offense, defense, offense. And it just always goes based off it. So you don't have to flip the coin each round.
Oh, okay. So someone is going to get the advantage, right? How much of an advantage do you think it is if you got to choose, if you win the toss the first time and you're like, oh, I want the back. So you get the back the first round and the third round. How much of an advantage do you think that is? And the reason I ask is because in Olympic wrestling, at overtime, it would flip a coin on who got the clinch.
Yeah.
And 90% of the time, whoever won that coin toss would win the Olympics. So they
It's
got
different.
in, they
It's
ended up
different.
getting, okay.
Yeah, EBI is going to be different because you still get the same opportunity, right? So just because I started off on my back doesn't mean that, or started on your back. The next round you get to start on my, the next of that round you get to start on my back. So you get
Okay.
the same exact opportunity as
Okay.
me. And it's like, say I submit you in 20 seconds. The only difference by going second is that you have to finish me in under 20 seconds. And to say that it's
Okay.
advantageous or not, I think it's almost more advantageous to go second because now
Okay.
I got to finish this guy in 20 seconds versus you might be like chilling. No, I didn't get the choke. No, I didn't get the choke. If you know you got 20 seconds, you just punch through and go for it.
Okay.
Now that can be advantageous or disadvantageous,
Okay.
right? Because you might rush something versus having good technique, or it might put a fire in you where you just turn it on and go.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think EVI rules, that sounds pretty good. And we want the public, we want to make this a show for the public. We want people to come in who are new to martial arts and watch this, and they see, wow, this is grappling. Oh, this is Muay Thai. And I want them to get the feeling like, hey, I want to try this. This is a welcoming environment. I want to try to do Ram Muay Thai. I want to do grappling while we do a live stream where we have a few thousand people watching it so the international scene sees it, while also giving local grapplers an opportunity to compete regularly. The opportunity to compete here in Vietnam is very rare. It's very rare. And let's say you have to fly to Hanoi, right? It's a very expensive flight. It's become much more expensive. You're talking maybe $150 for just for a flight. These Vietnamese can't afford that. So with our events, there's you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay, and then we try to match up Vietnamese with foreign grapplers so they get international experience. But I think with this next one, we want to introduce martial arts in a very unique, welcoming way, while giving them a show and giving grapplers like a pretty exciting arena to compete in.
I think it sounds like you're trying to conquer two things where you're giving people more opportunities and you want to get a bigger show. You got to be careful because you can't do a big show every time because sometimes you lose on overhead and everything. Sometimes just, promotion of fights is hit and miss. What you can do is you can do like qualifiers where you have like maybe monthly tournaments here. Say you even do it here and save on cost and save on everything. We just, fill this and you build a following, right? And then someone wins this, then they go to the next stage, right? And so or someone has like the, certain title, the local title, and then they go to the finals, and the finals is maybe in a big arena or something like that. And you guys, get a big location or something like that and a big setup. That way you could do this, every other week, once a month, whatever. You can get guys really good, and that's going to blow up the scene. Like 10th Planet Austin is really, they do Thursday fight nights. Every Thursday they do a fight.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Thursday night fights, yeah.
Yeah, and so the idea of if you want to accelerate the level of growth for grapplers, you just got to compete more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds like that opportunity isn't here. In the States, you can compete every weekend, right? But if you go and you throw tournaments, once a month or twice a month, you're giving people that opportunity, but you can't overstress yourself and overextend yourself with the promotion.
Yeah.
But then you could go and say, okay, hey, you win these ones, you're the, and then we go to the championships where the winners of each of those get a slot, right? So you can go and say like, hey, you do a championship every, I don't know, every 6 months or something like that. And then you take all the champions, those 6 champions, and they go into a bracket, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And then that's the main stage one. And then you can hype it up because those are the people that earned to be there. And you get to say, hey, this guy is a 2-time Saigon Super Fight champion.
Yep.
Now we're giving him for the belt, or you can make it for the belt or the title. You kind of just create like a tier system there that people can follow.
Yeah. These are great ideas. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we're definitely going to do that. And it's going to be interesting because now people kind of know about Saigon Super Fights. Last time we were, we had blue belts getting like 2 months salary right up front. And some people were like, did they really deserve that? And some of the negative effects that happened were now I was like, hey, you want to do Saigon Super Fights? And then the first question they ask for like, well, how much money am I going to make for taking the fight? And then I'm like, if you ask that question, you're automatically disqualified, and this is not why we do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard to find that balance with, you know, we don't want people doing it just for the money. We want to give them resources so that they can advance their career and things like that. But of course, you know, there's always going to be positive and negatives. But we did set the standard really, really high because we gave away so much money last time because we had good sponsors. But now I think this is a pretty cool arena. You get if we did Thursday night fights or Thursday night super fights every 2 weeks and make it easy and simple without overextending myself, which is my biggest weakness. I'll overextend myself and say yes to everything, and it makes things complicated. So yeah, I think EBI in this would be a really good for the audience and
Well, guys,
the grapplers.
it's official now. You got EBI coming now.
That's right.
Hopefully every 2 weeks. No,
That's
once
right.
a month. Now I'm not trying.
Well, we're gonna do the plan is we're gonna do a test run, 3 to 5 matches, and just kind of work out the bugs, and then we'll do the real Saigon Super Fights 3. But this place isn't gonna hold 200 people.
No.
So we're gonna just do like VIP only. Like if you're a coach, or maybe we have like some advisors like Liam Restonov and a few others who, you know, can come, and Otto from Arcane. But it's mainly going to be a live stream. Coaches are here. And we have like, thankfully we have photographers and sponsors who will do the videography and things like that. So super excited about having this new arena. We're just always trying to do events that hasn't happened before, to gain excitement and give people a reasoning to get in the doors of a martial arts gym, so maybe they join martial arts.
I mean, I think the cool thing for you is that being here, you kind of get to just use the formula that America already laid out, right? Like Metamoris, they had to fail in order for the next one to say, okay, hey, we can't do that kind of a budget. You know what I mean? Like, it's constantly getting adjusted as far as like what's the most entertaining and all that. But the nice thing is you get to just kind of see what works, what doesn't, and just kind of recreate that same formula over here.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, super excited about that. What are some of the other, you know, Adam and I have been doing this for a year. You know, this episode will be episode 52,
Wow.
which is exactly 1 year. And we did every Wednesday for a year or on these episodes. And, you know, our approach was basically just go to different gyms, make connections, try to create events and build excitement. Of course, I'm still very new to Jiu Jitsu. You know, I've been doing it for 4 years. There's so many people who have 4 or 5 times more experience in coaching and things like that. You've been all around the world. You have a significant amount of influence. You have a lot of different students. If you were us, you know, if you were, you know, the Saigon Saga, or if you were like an influential coach here in Vietnam, keep in mind, we have lots of small gyms that work together because we're under-resourced.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of helping each other grow, right? You know, what kind of advice do you have to us as a community? What else could we be doing to help, you know, expand? And one of the ideas that we had was bringing in external money into the community, because I don't want to charge local grapplers money to compete, you know, which is gonna put financial stress on them. I want to eliminate that. And so getting at international sponsors and things like that are something that's always working. But what are some of the other things, that creative ways that you can think of? You know, I saw on one of your videos, you did like sumo wrestling in your class, you know?
That's just fun. We're just having fun with that.
Yeah. But are there any other ideas, just from you only been here, you know, less than a week, that you can, advice that you have to us as the Saigon Grappling community that might be a little creative?
Yeah, I mean, like off the top of my head, I think you guys are doing all the right things, right? I think the number one thing for anything, whether you're starting a gym, you're starting a promotion, you're trying to build a scene in an entire country, the one thing that I always want to see, whether I know someone's going to make it or not, is do they live with passion? And you guys are living with passion. You got to be passionate about what you do. You can't fake it. If you fake it, it won't work, right? So you guys already have that. I think you guys are already a step ahead in the US where you guys aren't doing the whole crayon mentality of like no cross training, because that's how it was for us, you know? What I say for us is like my era. I was actually really lucky is that Denny was a really big fan of the idea of cross training. And
Yeah.
so he introduced me to Kyotera and Jake Shields, and I got to cross train with a lot of different high level grapplers. And that's part of the reason that I accelerated. You guys
Mm,
already have that. I like this open mat thing you guys have. It seems like there's an open mat at different places on different days. So you
yes.
guys already took that whole barrier out. You guys get to accelerate faster, right?
Mm,
Because that was kind of holding people back, you know? So I think you guys already got that going for you. I think that you kind of did touch on something that I think does help is sponsors, right? Because you're only limited on your certain amount of funds that you have to this event. But if you have outside sponsors, that's really what CGI worked. Because if we're going to be honest, if Craig didn't have money to throw $1 million out, he wouldn't have, even though his everything was really thought through really well, the rules, DK, I mean, the pit, it would not have had the same impact. People were heard $1 million and like, whoa, what the fuck?
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man.
And they came out for that. So I think, you know, if you can get that, that really helps. I do think also, I don't know how it is here, but I know in the US, there's definitely a divide between the grappling community and the striking community, but we're all one and the same.
Yeah.
And so what you can do is maybe collaborate with some of the kickboxing events out here or MMA events. And you
Mm,
kind of do a little bit of like one FC is doing, and now UFC is actually doing it too, where they're hosting. UFC Fight Pass has a grappling tournament as well. But one
yeah.
FC, you're going to have a grappling match, an MMA match, a Muay Thai match, and it's kind of this
Okay.
revolving door like that.
Yeah.
It might be a great opportunity to kind of combine people that already have that itch for the fight sports. And, you know, you might have like, you know, a group of Muay Thai guys watching it, and maybe, you know, one or two of them are like, hey, I'll try that. I saw that at the gym the other day. Maybe I'll go to Jiu Jitsu tomorrow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a great idea. And this is a perfect venue
Yeah.
for that. I think what this gym is it's a great way for someone, because a lot of people are intimidated to start martial arts. It's amazing to me. I was talking to a 27-year-old guy yesterday, pretty fit. And I'm like, hey man, you know, why don't you do martial arts? And he's like, yeah, I think my time has passed. You know, I used to do, you know, Vietnamese striking, you know, when I was 22. And I think I'm past my age. I'm like, dude, you're 27 years old. You know what I mean? So people are intimidated. But what this gym does, Yum does such a great job. She has so much energy. She's so welcoming. The Muay Thai class, everyone's laughing and having a good time. And I think this might be a good venue to kind of mix these grappling, have a few grappling matches, and then maybe like a Muay Thai sparring. Nothing too serious.
Yeah.
But
You do like a smoker.
yeah,
Like smokers, you know, and gives people the opportunity. But this facility, I think that's a great facility. You guys got the ice baths over here. You got the grappling, you got the ring, you got all the bags. Like it's a beautiful facility. And I think you could definitely throw some events in here with the, you know,
yeah,
the ring.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask a couple personal
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely. Shoot ahead.
I mean, so I mean, like for me, thankfully, I wrestled in high school, I wrestled in college, so adapting to jiu-jitsu was a little easier for me than a pure jiu-jitsu person. You are a pure jiu-jitsu guy, but you accelerated extremely fast, right? You know, like very fast, and you were tapping black belts at like white belt or blue belt or whatever, which is amazing. Of course, you have some great coaches. What's something that you still struggle with in jiu-jitsu? What's a challenge that you're trying to overcome in jiu-jitsu?
For you. Yeah, I think for me now, and I don't know if it's a struggle or it's more of just the next problem. All right. So like for me, like where I accelerated was I lived with passion. I was obsessed. I am obsessed. That hasn't changed. I still am completely obsessed with the sport. I love it so much. I'm constantly studying and looking how to grow myself. Now that I'm retired and I'm more focused on my students, is how do I give that to my students? And so that comes to a couple different things. The first one is I'm constantly looking at how do I take somebody that walked off the street, and then how do I most efficiently give them the skills, right? Because, back in the day, we didn't really have a system of like, what was the best techniques to learn? You might have been learning some bullshit techniques, not bullshit in the sense that it was bad techniques, but it maybe wasn't like the highest percentage thing that you should have been focusing on, right? Like you might have been focusing on a technique. You saw something in a match, and you're like, oh, that looked cool. I want to try to recreate that. And then it's like, maybe that was more of a gimmicky move, right? Where it works, but it shouldn't be, you shouldn't spend 2 months trying to learn it. You should, you know what I mean? And so like trying to figure out, now we have a little bit more data and we know a little bit more of like the higher percentage tiers. And it's like, I'm constantly looking at like ways to give it most efficiently to my students, right? And I feel like I have a pretty solid system, but that takes you got to constantly monitor that because it's constantly evolving. Jiu-Jitsu is evolving. And so for me, I'm constantly watching every tournament and I'm looking for trends, like the same way there was a leg lock era. Then there was, before that, there was a berimbolo era. Then there was a wrestling era. And then there was a wrestle up era, right? And it's kind of like there's, when I say era, it's like a boom of like, oh shit, a couple guys know this and the rest of everyone doesn't. Then everybody catches up. And now that just becomes part of jiu-jitsu, right? Because all this leg locks that we have today, when I started, it didn't exist, you know? I remember when I was learning leg locks, my coach taught me some of the fundamentals. But the beauty about my coach, Denny, was just like, hey, jiu-jitsu is always evolving. I don't have all the time to focus on this. I give you the power to just focus on leg locks. That's going to be your thing. You focus on that. And then like we have another guy and he's like, hey, you're really good at this. You dive in that. And then Denny would bring everybody into the table and everybody would kind of put into the pot what their findings were. You know what I mean? So I'd be studying like the Russians in their sambo leg locks. And I'd be studying the Japanese. And kind of creating my own thing. That created an era because other people on the other side of the world in New York, Danaher and their guys, they were doing it. So 10th Planet was doing it. Danaher was doing it. You have a couple guys, maybe at Fight Sports, that were doing it. And then it creates an era. You have that and it becomes part of the sport eventually. Wrestling, you have all these different eras that are coming up. You got to stay tuned. Because you're going to miss it because jiu-jitsu is changing. So that's the thing that I'm working on, is constantly staying up to date on that. The second thing is like, someone can have all the talent in the world, but if they don't have the passion or the work ethic, that's hard. And so I really struggle sometimes where I'll get a guy that walks through my door and he's got all the skill in the world and he's got all the right things. I either got to somehow show him what he's capable of, or motivate him or something so that we can tap into that. Because sometimes you lose those guys, they lose interest and stuff like that. They don't have the passion. And so it is a struggle for me, maybe because I get so passionate. I think really the true answer is you just got to accept it. Somebody wants this, come get it. If not, it's not for you. That's totally fine. I think that's kind of my struggle, is accepting that, I think, really.
Yeah. And there's some things you can't teach.
Yeah.
You can't teach the mindset.
Yeah.
I have 2 younger brothers. Both of them are more naturally stronger than me. Both of them are bigger than me, but they just don't have the mind for it. They either don't like competition, or they don't like, one of my other brothers, he didn't grow up as rough as, Matt and I did. So even though he's literally the strongest, most naturally strong person I've ever met in my life, he could crush me easily. But there's components to jiu-jitsu that you cannot teach. You cannot teach a mindset. And that's for that reason, from what I've seen in my short 4 years, the people who adapt, best to grappling are folk style wrestlers and South African rugby players.
I've never heard that.
Because
I get it. I understand. I got a couple rugby guys.
These South African, these guys are tough, man. I mean, they already have the minds. They're already tough, and so like if you're going against a South African, you know they're gonna have a strong mindset and they're gonna be resilient. And then specifically folk style wrestling, the difference between folk style and freestyle is just all takedowns. Folk style is holding a person down, and there's a lot more ground wrestling in folk style, which is unique to the United States. So
Can I challenge?
yeah,
Can I challenge this
yeah,
real quick?
yeah.
Respectfully, I do think that mindset can be taught, and I've heard this from so many coaches. I think what can't be taught, and this is what I was saying is where I struggle, is giving people the will to push through to get it, right? So like when you're talking about like rugby players and wrestlers and stuff like that, and they have the right mindset, well, they were taught the right mindset in rugby. They were taught the mindset in wrestling, right?
Yeah.
When you go through those trainings, you go through those drills and you go through that grind, that's what toughens you up and gives you that mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
And they chose to go through that period of misery.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can make it to the other side.
Yeah. But
You know?
so I can, if someone, you just got to, as a coach, if someone tells me they have a dream and if that's truly their dream, I can give them the mindset, I can give them the skills.
Okay.
But the problem is they got to really, it's like, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Because if you don't want it bad enough, you ain't going to make it. Because you got to dedicate fully to it. I lost so many opportunities as far as like hanging out, doing fun shit because I'm like, nah, sorry, I got to be on point. I got to train. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of like it. I'd get injured. You know, for me, I had a good career as a firefighter. I was making good money. I lost all of that because I'm kind of an idiot. I just decided, hey, I want to do jiu-jitsu instead.
Yeah.
You know?
Keep going. I'm just going to make sure the cameras are working.
So for me, I look at it as like, you got to want this. You got to want this. And I do think that, you know, I didn't know day one that I wanted this forever. So it's kind of like something that just kind of grows as you do it. Because when I first started this, I was like, I just want to get a blue belt and then I'm going to quit and do something else. I'm going to go into rock climbing or whatever. And then I got a blue belt and then I set new goals and then the next goal and the next goal and you just keep setting these goals. And then eventually, honestly, it was probably blue purple. I was like, I just want to be a black belt world champion. I want to be one of the best in the world. And then that motivated me to do that because I didn't give two shits about purple belt worlds. I would do these tournaments, right? But
yeah,
I really knew what my real goal was here. So this was just a step to get there. You know?
Yeah.
But you can teach the mindset. You can teach the skills. You got to create situations to teach people those. But they just got to know, do they want it? Do they want to eat shit for a couple of years? Do they want to suck for a couple of years? Do you want to be the fucking nail and get hammered every day? But that's what's going to make you a hammer.
Yeah, for sure. You talk about trends, you talk about eras like the leg lock era and things like that, and things are constantly evolving. You study this, you study the physics behind, you know, jiu-jitsu and things like, just like Vince does, just like Coley does here in Saigon, you know. I don't really have that. I don't really go home and study the way that I should. What's the next trend that you see that we should be paying attention to, and specifically techniques that are going to win competitions?
Right now, I don't see like an immediate hole in the sense that like, oh, this is something that's going to come in. Because, you know, for a long time, the jiu-jitsu community knew that their takedown sucked, right? Because they were starting from the knees, right? And so it's like we were training and doing this for years, but everyone knew deep down in their heart there was a piece missing, right? You know, it's like the same way like that the Brazilians banned leg locks, and you go to these tournaments and knew, and like, why is there this technique that we're not allowed to do? There's like a big hole missing. So I don't think it's going to be as subtle as that. I think now really we're hitting to the era where we're going to see just the guys that can do it all. They can wrestle, they can leg lock, they can do that. But I also think that it's going to get refined. And what I mean by that is that, okay, let's look at back. We've talked a lot about CGI, but let's look at CGI with Nolf versus Rotolo.
Yeah.
Nolf is one of the highest pedigrees of wrestling.
Yep.
Rotolo is a pure jiu-jitsu artist.
Yes.
But did Nolf take him down?
He didn't take him down.
He didn't take him down.
But
they both had almost moments. There was moments where Rotolo almost took Nolf down. There was moments where, they had their moments. So it's like, okay, why was that so evenly matched? And it's because the Rotolos are that next generation. And that next generation, the next upcoming, is not the guys that can wrestle. It's guys that can do jiu-jitsu takedowns. Because traditional wrestling has its flaws. And the same way I said, hey, the jiu-jitsu community saw they had a flaw of not knowing takedowns, right? Like for Nogi, they had some judo collar throws and stuff like that. We saw that big opening. Well, I think someone that's a pure wrestler should look at it and say, I'm definitely have some openings or vulnerabilities in my wrestling for grappling when there's submissions in play and what the rules are, because the rules aren't the same. The rules of the techniques of wrestling were developed for the rule set. Once the rule set changes, the techniques need to change as well.
Of course.
So now by default, what I see as like the next thing is the new style of takedowns. You're going to see that coming up where it's not right now, guys that are traditional wrestlers, they're having success. It's going to change with grappling, submission takedowns, submission orient or takedowns that are, I don't even know the word, but they play into it changes differently. I think you're going to see a lot less people shooting with the knee to the mat. I think you're going to see a lot more foot sweeps. I think you're going to see a little bit more of an upright judo style versus like a traditional wrestling style where your head's low. You're just getting guillotine and kimura and stuff like that. I think there's a lot more opportunities there. So you're going to see a morphing of the takedown style. I think that's something that we're going to see. I also think we're already seeing it now, but I think we're going to see a lot more standing passing, Actually, I think there's another era coming back. I think CGI kind of showed it. Levi really just showing what the possibility of the guard is. I think he really showed an incredible guard. And it's not the guard that we're used to, because when people think of guard, they think of closed guard, right? And I think closed guard is the most powerful position you can be in, but getting there, right? Like getting there so hard. And guys have gotten really good at just stalling you out and then getting a ref to stand you up, right? So I think what you're going to see a lot more is this, I think Levi kind of opened up a little bit that you're going to see that style of guard develop more. There's a lot of kids studying that right now. They're adding it in and they're going to be popping up to the scenes, but you got to be good at it all. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, it's not going to be the guys that can just play guard like Levi or just the guys that can just wrestle. It's going to be the guys that can do it all. Like the Tackett's. They can wrestle, they can play guard, they can do it all. You got to be well-rounded at everything, but really good at a couple things.
It's almost like Georges St. Pierre. He wasn't the greatest striker, he wasn't the greatest grappler, but he was the best at mixing all three of them together and the ability to kind of transition between the two or the three. So what you're saying is, the ability to transition to, maybe I'm trying to go to a sweep and that's not working, now going in on a leg or something like that, and being able to transition to all these different types of submissions and dominant positions in jiu-jitsu, not just one like during the leg lock era.
I think like right now it's like guys will like kind of have categories where like, oh, that guy's a wrestler, that guy's a guard player. I think we're going to see less of that, and we're going to see more of just like jiu-jitsu. Like this guy can wrestle, this guy can play guard, this guy can do it all. It's like maybe he started in guard and then he swept and then he wrestled the guy up and then he played Tauba smashed. You know what I mean? Like you're going to see a little bit more of guys that can do it all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I believe, I'm a wrestler, of course. I think that shooting for the legs is like one of the most dangerous things you can do to a jiu-jitsu guy. And that's part of the reason why Nolf had such a hard time, because now he's going up against one of the best, Doris chokers in the world. How much did that play into it? Did Nolf hesitate a little bit, in his takedowns, because he was afraid of getting Darced, from those positions? So it's like, these all kind of play into that. I mean, Nolf was a 3-time Division I NCAA champion. There's only been a few of those in history.
I was really impressed with him. I'm super impressed with Nolf. Like, I was giving credit to Rotolo for being able to stand with him, but you got to be able to give Nolf credit that he was able to hang with Rotolo with the submissions the way he did.
Oh, yeah.
Like, really credit for the limited amount of time that he's had in the sport. It seems like he's dedicating himself a little bit. I'd be very eager to see what he can do in like 1 to 2 more years,
Yeah.
of like modifying his style for that. Um, and right now he's kind of doing super fights in the CGI rule set. If I'm going to be honest, if he does ADCC, like that style, he's going to fuck the shit up
Yeah.
like that, right? Like ADCC is submission wrestling. Put
Yeah.
him in there, he might become an ADCC champion, But I think
Yeah.
he's chasing the money right now. I think he's doing only like the super fights and stuff like that. He's not really entering in tournaments. But we saw what Pat Downey went in blue belt world championships, got DQ'd, whatever. But he shouldn't be a blue belt, you know what I mean? But we're seeing him doing tournaments, and it's obviously dominant.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many matches did Nolf have before CGI when he went against Rotolo?
I actually don't know. I don't know. I just know that he had a limited amount of grappling experience and then just accepted it. I think Craig just wanted to make it exciting, so he brought a bunch of wrestlers in.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
he wanted to see how the wrestlers would do in the grappling art. But at the same time, I kind of knew how it was going to go down, how it did. There's no way. It's the same way as this is like, you can't go, all respect to Rotolo, but if you go and put him on those wrestling mats, he's going to get fucked up in the first round. He's going to be good, but there's no way he's going to be champion, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as this is like all those wrestlers that got put into that tournament, they knew they weren't going to win. You know what I mean? Like there's no way that based on grappling rules, they were going to be a grappler that only does that art.
Yeah.
It's the same way that, it's like the Mackenzie Dern versus Fionn. And it's like, and Mackenzie Dern had a UFC fight like 2 weeks before. So she was in UFC mindset. Even though she is a champion, she was an ADCC champion. She's like, or was she was ADCC? I'm drawing a blank right now. Don't quote me on that.
It's okay.
But she was a champion of many titles, right? A, she was in a different era, but B, the most important thing was that she was in a different mindset. Like you got to be absolutely obsessed in the rule set that you're going into to succeed in it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And ADCC, like at least for me, and there's ways to game the system. There's definitely ways to game the system. And I think that if we can get toward like a unified rule set to where, we can minimize that and where it's a show for the fans and it's a real stage for the athletes, I think that's when, jiu-jitsu globally, can kind of grow. Right. But, it's a new sport and it's a sport that has, every other day there's a new move, there's a new technique, unlike wrestling where there's really not a lot of techniques and it's been around for thousands of years. Right.
But they're similar, actually. They're similar. There's just more of them in jiu-jitsu. I don't even know if there's there is new techniques every once in a while, but like wrestling, it's like you could categorize it like there's a single leg, there's a double leg, fireman, whatever. But it's the setup to get there, right? So it's the same thing is that like, there's arm bars, there's heel hooks, there's knee bars, but it's the setup to get there, right?
Yeah.
And so like, that's really where you're seeing a lot of like newer development and techniques, but like, you would think in a couple thousand years, we'd kind of summarize different ways to break the body. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the goal of wrestling is me put you on your back and then that's the going to end the match.
It's simpler. It's checkers and chess.
Exactly.
Right. But even in chess, there's a certain amount of moves that we've expected, but the setup of how you do it, that's where you're seeing the changes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Great, man. Hey, is there, you've really impressed a lot of people here in Saigon, and I think you've really contributed to the Saigon grappling community. We really appreciate you coming out here. This is your first time in Asia. You're going to Japan next. You have a really big gym in California, and you're still very young. You have a long career ahead of you. What are some of the things that you want to do in the next 5-10 years? In terms of your influence, not just on individual your students in your gym, but like globally that you see that you can kind of grow these communities in Vietnam and Japan and things like that. What are some of the things that you see?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I'm passionate about coming out, and I like to see new places, meet new people. I also just love seeing the sport grow. I love seeing the sport grow. So coming out and helping, just teach some stuff to you guys. And I enjoy doing that. goals, if I'm going to be, the goals that I have, like in my life right now, my goal right now is legacy. And that means not just for me, but for my students. That's mainly what it is I want to build champions, and I want to build like the top 1%. Like I got, some of my students that really have real potential to be some of the best in the world. We have like Johnny Mazeretzky, Corbin Byland, Christian Huerta. Like these are guys that I'm really putting my heart and soul into because I want to give them what they want. They want to be some of the best grapplers in the world. We've got a couple world champions, but like the reality is like, there's just other teams that have done it on such another level. I want to be right there with the big dogs. So my goal is not to have a team of guys that just does okay. I want to be one of the teams that's in the conversation as one of the greatest teams ever.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really good. That being said, is there anything that we can do here in Saigon that can help you in your legacy? We hope that you come back. Some of your students kind of live out here. What can we do, in terms of maybe content creation, networking, and things like that, to help you, spread your influence, spread your legacy?
Honestly, man, I'm just happy to hang out with you guys. You know what I mean? Hang out. We'll do podcasts here. We'll have some food. We'll hopefully come out and teach some techniques again. Maybe in the future, some of those students that I have, like Johnny Mazeretzky and those guys, or Corbin and Christian, we'll bring them out here to you guys, show you guys a little bit what we got. And honestly, I know it's difficult to come out, but maybe one day you guys can come out to us. I love cross training. My doors are always open. I get guys coming in from New Zealand. I get guys coming in from like Finland and Russia and all kinds of stuff. And like, when you say like, what can we do? It's like, well, we can help each other because you keep living with the passion here, and like you guys can work on some stuff, and then like come over and then like show us some stuff, and we'll come over and show you guys some stuff, because I'm always open to learn. I don't think we're like the know-it-all gym. I think we got some really solid systems, but I like learning from everybody. You know what I mean? Like I said, like we're talking about sumo, like I'm going to sumo because I love sumo right now. That's kind of like a obsession that's recently occurred. But at the same time, there's elements of sumo that I can learn from in jiu-jitsu, where I think most jiu-jitsu artists, they're not real martial arts fans, and they're not going to watch sumo. They're going to say, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to watch that. But you know what? That kind of goes to like, I remember, my coach Denny, he used to go and do like different types of yoga. And you're like, why the fuck is this guy doing yoga? But he's thinking about yoga to help jiu-jitsu. Or he would go and do like Tai Chi. Like in San Francisco, we have a strong Asian culture there with like Tai Chi masters that have been doing it for long. He would go and meet with these guys and like do one-on-one sessions. Or he would do one sessions with kettlebells and become kettlebell certified. And that helped inspire me too, is that you could see different arts, not even martial arts, yoga, kettlebells. And you could see like things that not everything's going to work, but you might be like, oh, this will work. It's like in my gym right now, we have strong first guys like Luis, or we have Coach Hoppa with TacFit. They do club bells, like the club bells, the kettlebells and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, if you would have told somebody a couple of years ago, hey, this is going to help your grappling, kettlebells are going to help your grappling, and be like, nah, fuck that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I want to just always learn, you know what I mean? So come through, teach some shit. We'll teach you guys some shit. And that's really the beauty of jiu-jitsu, is the exchange there, having fun, having laughs, and learning some stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people in Vietnam, they travel to California and they go to San Francisco. And I'm going to do my best to send those guys to your gym. And because that way, even though we're on the other side of the world, we can still help each other grow and connect and build this global jiu-jitsu community.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share? And by the way, I'm wearing my 10th Planet.
Oh, you got the
10th Planet
shirt.
Austin. These are the best. I have two pair. These are like the most comfortable, best pairs of shorts I've ever gotten, because a lot of jiu-jitsu shorts are down here and they're heavy and they're thick. I kind of like these.
The higher up ones are better.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like this, these are
better. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those old board chart days, the old tap out days, those are over.
Yeah, I won't wear those.
Yeah,
I won't wear those. But these 10th Planet, like the way
Austin makes really good gear. Curtis, they have like a really good manufacturer they work with. Austin definitely has some solid gear.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. With that, anything else you'd like to share with,
No,
with
hey,
the world?
everybody that stayed tuned and watched this, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me out. It's really been a pleasure for me to come out to Vietnam and just experience it. And, the whole community has been so warm and welcoming, and I appreciate all you guys. So thank you very much.